Jimmy McGill, a struggling lawyer trying to make a name for himself, discovers systematic fraud at Sandpiper Crossing, an assisted living facility for the elderly. Through meticulous investigation, he finds that the facility has been overcharging its residents through hidden fees in their monthly bills. Jimmy begins signing up residents as clients, building what could potentially become a lucrative class action lawsuit. Sandpiper's management quickly recognizes the threat and attempts to block Jimmy's access to the residents. They seek a restraining order, claiming his loud and flamboyant presence disrupts the residents' routines. In court, Richard Schweikart of Schweikart & Coakley, representing Sandpiper, argues that residents can leave the facility if they want to meet with Jimmy or communicate through phone or mail. Jimmy counters this effectively, pointing out that many residents are physically unable to leave, the most common phrase in this place. "I've fallen and I can't get up." The judge sides with Jimmy, denying the restraining order. Jimmy returns triumphant to Chuck's house, where his older brother has been working on the case while dealing with his electromagnetic hypersensitivity condition. But Jimmy's victory celebration is cut short when he discovers that Schweikart and Coakley have begun their real strategy, burying them in paperwork. Boxes of interrogatories, deposition notices, and documents challenging the mental competence of the elderly clients have been delivered. Chuck, a brilliant attorney with decades of experience, recognizes this tactic immediately. He explains to Jimmy that this is just the beginning. The opposing counsel will continue this document dump until they are drowning, making it impossible for two lawyers to handle alone. Using the analogy of building the Brooklyn Bridge, Chuck convinces Jimmy that they need to refer the case to HHM, Hamlin, and McGill, Chuck's former prestigious law firm, arguing that their elderly clients deserve quick resolution that only a large firm with substantial resources can provide. To much reluctance and what he describes as submitting to the dark side, Jimmy agrees to bring the Sandpiper case to HHM. He and Chuck prepare meticulously, with Chuck insisting all electronic devices be left in the trunk of the car due to his condition. The brothers are greeted at HHM with applause and a warm reception, particularly for Chuck, who hasn't been to the office in years due to his illness. In the conference room, Howard Hamlin and the firm's partners are visibly excited about the case's potential. They discuss expanding the case to include Sandpiper facilities in 5 states, potentially increasing the number of plaintiffs from 68 to 350 or more. The charges include fraud, unfair and deceptive trade practices, and racketeering. Howard begins delegating tasks, instructing teams to travel to out-of-state facilities and assigning Kim Wexler and Daniel to meet with Jimmy's signed clients. When the discussion turns to terms, Howard offers Jimmy 20% of the common fund share of the final settlement and a $20,000 of counsel fee for his work thus far. Jimmy accepts these terms but then asks for Office 312, next to Chuck's. Howard asks everyone to leave the room and delivers the shocking news: "You're not working here." Despite bringing a multi-million-dollar class action lawsuit on a damn platinum platter, Jimmy is told the firm wants the case but not him. Jimmy erupts in anger, demanding to know why Howard hates him so much. Howard simply states that a majority decision has been made by him and the partners not to take on any new associates. Jimmy correctly points out that someone bringing in a case of this magnitude would normally be offered partnership, not merely an associate position. When Chuck ineffectually suggests Howard reconsider, Jimmy explodes, promising to tell all the clients what a lying miserable pig fucker Howard is and threatening to burn the whole thing to the ground before giving him the case. Later, Kim Wexler confronts Howard about the unfair treatment of Jimmy, defending his hard work and quality as a lawyer. Howard dismisses her concerns coldly, telling her she's way out of her depth and that he doesn't care about her opinion on the matter. In a parallel storyline, a nervous man using the pseudonym Price has arranged to hire 3 bodyguards through a veterinarian who makes such connections. The bodyguards meet in a parking lot, sizing each other up while waiting for their employer. 2 of them carry multiple firearms and project tough guy personas. The third, an older, calmer man, appears to be carrying nothing but a pimento sandwich, which he refers to as the caviar of the South. When the armed bodyguards discover their colleague has no weapon, they mock him mercilessly and suggest to Price that he should fire the unarmed man and pay them more instead. The older man quietly challenges one of them to take my gun from me, and when attacked, effortlessly disarms and humiliates the aggressor, revealing himself to be highly skilled in combat. He systematically disarms both men, taking control of all their weapons with ease. Price, impressed by this display, decides to hire only this man, Mike Ementrout, paying him the full $1,500 originally intended for all 3 bodyguards. As they prepare for the job, Price is visibly nervous about the upcoming transaction, overthinking the exchange process and asking questions about who should hand over what first. Mike calmly explains that the process will be simple. Price will take and count the money, and if it's all there, he'll hand over the pills. Easy peasy. The nervous Price expresses regret about not having 3 men for the job, but Mike reassures him. Their preparation includes Price wearing a hidden bulletproof vest under his shirt, with Mike praising it as a good idea, though he doesn't seem overly concerned about potential danger. Mike accompanies Price to a remote meeting spot to complete the transaction with Ignacio Nacho Varga, a drug dealer. Price nervously rambles about how the exchange should work, but Mike succinctly explains how things will proceed. When Nacho arrives, the deal initially goes smoothly until Mike notices the payment is $20 short of the agreed amount. Despite the insignificant amount and Price's willingness to let it slide, Mike insists on receiving the full payment. When Nacho asks if he's really willing to blow up this deal over $20, Mike calmly returns the question to him. This principled stand impresses Nacho, who produces the missing money, and the transaction is completed without further issues. After the deal, Price asks Mike how he knew not to bring a gun. Mike reveals the extensive research he conducted before taking the job. He explains that Nacho is running this deal outside his regular crew and doesn't want his bosses to know about it, so it was in Nacho's best interest for everything to go smoothly. The lesson is, Mike tells Price, if you're gonna be a criminal, do your homework. Price protests that he's not a bad guy, prompting Mike to share his philosophical perspective on criminality and ethics. Mike explains that he's known good criminals and bad cops, bad priests, honorable thieves, and that being on one side of the law or the other isn't what defines a person's character. What matters is keeping your word when you make a deal. He tells Price that by selling something that wasn't his for profit, he has become a criminal, good one, bad one. That's up to you. When Price mentions he can get more pills, Mike suggests he think about it carefully before deciding to continue down this path. After the HHM debacle, Jimmy drowns his sorrows in alcohol, waiting for Kim to join him so he can rant about Howard's douchebaggery. When she arrives, instead of supporting his outrage, Kim surprisingly suggests that Jimmy should take the deal. She argues that it would allow him to be financially rewarded without the risk, build his own practice, and be his own man away from HHM's influence. Jimmy is stunned by her apparent betrayal, accusing her of being a pod person and selling out to Howard. He asks what Hamlin promised her, a better office or protection from being sent back to the mailroom. The argument ends badly, with Jimmy deeply hurt by what he perceives as Kim's lack of loyalty. The next morning, Jimmy arrives at Chuck's house early, finding his brother ironing his clothes. Chuck is in good spirits, talking about how being back at the office felt good and how the space blanket lining in his suit, to protect him from electromagnetic fields, made being outside more tolerable. When Chuck asks if Jimmy is alright, Jimmy admits he didn't sleep and came to a decision after some soul-searching. He's going to take the deal. As they discuss this, Chuck expresses regret that they won't be working together, painting a picture of the two McGill boys side by side storming the gates, righting wrongs, taking down the bad guys. Jimmy thanks Chuck for looking out for him and suggests that perhaps Chuck could convince Howard to change his mind by threatening to quit HHM, the nuclear option that would force Howard's hand, since the firm couldn't survive without Chuck. It's at this moment that Jimmy reveals he's figured everything out. He noticed his phone battery was mysteriously drained after leaving it in Chuck's mailbox, which he always turns off out of respect for Chuck's condition. After calling the phone company, he discovered a deleted late-night call to Howard made from Chuck's house the night before their HHM meeting. Jimmy confronts Chuck about the physical toll such a call must have taken on him. That phone must have felt like a blowtorch in your ear given Chuck's extreme aversion to electronics. He demands to know why Chuck would go to such lengths to sabotage him, asking what was so important that Chuck had to call Howard before their meeting. The only explanation, Jimmy realizes, is that Chuck told Howard not to hire him. Finally, Jimmy connects the dots all the way back to when he first passed the bar and tried to join HHM years earlier. It wasn't Howard who had been blocking him all this time, it was his own brother. Devastated, Jimmy asked Chuck directly, "Why were you working against me, Chuck?" In a crushing moment of honesty, Chuck reveals his true feelings: "You're not a real lawyer." He dismisses Jimmy's law degree from the University of American Samoa as a joke and an online course that allowed Jimmy to take shortcuts instead of committing his life to the profession as Chuck had done. Chuck admits he was proud when Jimmy straightened out and got a job in the mailroom at HHM, but he could never accept him as a peer in the legal profession. And perhaps the most hurtful part of his speech, Chuck states, "I know you. I know what you were, what you are. People don't change. You're Slip-In Jimmy. And Slip-In Jimmy I can handle just fine." Slip-In Jimmy with a law degree is like a chimp with a machine gun. The law is sacred. If you abuse that power, people get hurt. Utterly betrayed by the brother he had been caring for through his illness, Jimmy silently gathers ice, food, and fuel canisters, enough supplies to last Chuck 3 or 4 days. As he walks out the door, he delivers his final words to Chuck, "I am done." Chuck calls after Jimmy repeatedly, but Jimmy doesn't look back, marking a profound rupture in their relationship.